Good evening, good evening, good evening. Good evening, good evening. Okay, last set of pain, and then we move forward. Good evening, good evening. Good evening. Jaswant, as it is, it will take 2 to 3 minutes for everybody to join in. Well, perfect, Tina. Nothing better. Shreyas, in my book, the MCQs would be not of any purpose to you, other than you can attempt them, but because they are UGC net oriented and UGC net previous year questions, the content is important, the mocks may be important, but previous year questions aren't. Because as it is for previous year questions, UPSC, there are thousands of books. And as it is, we discuss it in class also. That is the only part of that book which is not relevant. Out of that 616 pages, maybe 200 may not be relevant to you, 400 is. Radical means who wants quick change, fundamental change. Conservatives are who don't want change, status quoists. But if you're solving those questions, Shreyas, then you're already solving much above UPSC level questions. You're able to do that, Shreyas? Yes, sir, I am. Then perfect. Then UPSC questions would not be difficult for you. Both are difficult. Kambha. UPSC and UGC net are difficult in their own right. More difficult is UPSC because UPSC has 3 different stages to cross: prelims, mains, interview. But the question level of UGC net is extremely high as compared to UPSC. Because there, what is the presumption? UGC net can only be given by master students who are masters MA in their stream. So CSIR net or UGC net, NTA based net, these two are question levels are extremely difficult. But overall, UPSC is more difficult. Perfect, Gulam, nothing better. Anupali, there is no one here other than me. So I can't give you the PPT or PDF link. I don't know how to as it is. You will get it. If you can see in your dashboard, it will be there. The PPT for all 3 sessions remains the same only. If you do, you have the PPT of the first and second session, non-annotated one. It's 306 slides. It will remain same for all 3. The annotations change as per where I've stopped. In one, you will get the first 60, then you will get the next 60 and something like that. And there is a saying, Kambham, no exam is easy in this world. Once you clear it, it seems to be easy. Every exam is equally difficult for the person who's giving it. SSC is the same story. No exam is easy. School exams, same. Your 10th and 12th was much more high pressure than UPSC. 10th, 12th, BA honors, college level examination. Every exam has its own pressures. Level of questions may change, but your intellect also changes. Today, if I give you the exam for school level, you will solve it because intellect is higher. Whilst I wait one more minute for people to join in, we'll discuss. SSC is given by more number of people. Nowadays, the result is also not coming. Yamini, I don't know. Modern history next will. I have no idea. I think these are the last two batches of the year itself. Evening batch as it is happening and weekend batch this one. Remembering things is difficult for me. No, it is for everyone. Everybody hates learning and remembering. It's about how good you cope in this, managing your time and how systematically you remember. In history, in modern India, you will give the section mains important topics. Kumkum, every topic I discuss, I'm having a conversation with you, and I think I've not said any topic till this point, only prelims oriented. I teach you at two levels, if you see. Factual level, which is prelims oriented, and a conceptual level, which is basically for the examination mains. So I can't there is no categorical division, unlike art and culture, where there's a categorical division that these topics can come in mains and this can come in prelims. This is not like this. This is not like this. Remember this. May in this, it is not like that. Modern is both prelims and mains oriented. Yes, Kumkum. Tina, if you will look at it like that, more pressure will get created. Prelims 180 days from today. Don't do that to yourself. Don't do that to yourself. If do that, do one thing. Multiply it by 24. How much does the number come? 4,320 hours into 60. सेकेंड्स में नहीं काउंट करेंगे, मिनट्स में अच्छा लगेगा. 2,59,200 minutes you have. Everything is a matter of perspective. Can't manage 2,59,200 minutes. If not 44,320 hours. And let's take it that you waste 2,000 hours. Mota moti. According to you, 180 days. I remove 8 hours for sleep. Can anybody do the maths for me? 8 hours sleep. How much would be 180 into 8? 1440. So out of this 44, you minus 1440. How much time are you awake? 2,880 hours. Let's take it that 80 hours you are eating. 2,800 hours you have. Let's discount you don't want to study for 800 hours. 2,000 hours you can't study. I've already accounted for your sleep. And for some of you, you may be working professionals. I get it. You may have only 1,000 hours. Is there anybody who's cleared this exam in 6 months? People have cleared this exam in 3 months, 2 months. They have taken 25 months also. There is no set rule. Okay. But 3 months wale have strong base. Doesn't matter. Get it. Reading the book once will not do anything. Going through my class and reading the PPT once will not do anything. It is about how you effectively use that information. Because UPSC does not make questions out of standard books. It makes question out of application of standard knowledge. So it's not about remembering the question which is given in the. That is why I say previous year questions are good for pattern but for useless for practice, because any polity question you can answer it through Lakshmikant for sure. But have you ever seen that they've quoted exactly Lakshmikant? They it is the application of the knowledge which you get from Lakshmikant. So it's about application of knowledge rather than the knowledge itself. That is the difference. Basically, 85 days is good enough to complete the syllabus. Yes. Now what you've done is divided this by 24, 6, 24. Perfect. Okay. Now, so let's start our discussion. I think everybody's here. You want these? I hope I still have that copied. It's the railway article. I'll look for it. I have not copied pasted the police one. I'll try to give it. Yeah, email me. I'll send it to you straight. Okay. Now we have covered reformist, revivalist, Hinduism. Now depressed class reform. What we have to cover is basically, see, this is not revivalist, reformist. All are reformist only. And here you have three basic areas and ideas. First is Jyotiba and Savitribai Phule. Second is Sri Narayan Guru. And the third is Periyar, or as you call him, E.V. Ramaswamy Naikar. And Phule, Sri Narayan Guru, and Periyar, they all three represent a very important change which came in the way we thought. See, let's be very honest, and let's be very, very, very honest. And this is a time of being honest. I can very confidently say right now, that in India, caste and varna remain an issue. If you are in urban India, you may not find it, or you may not be able to, you are not cognizant of the way caste and varna works. But in certain parts of India, honor killing is still happening. In certain part of India, certain people are not allowed to, or certain communities are not allowed to use an animal because it is related to a certain caste. Certain grooms and brides get shot because of using certain rituals which are connected to certain caste. A certain biasness with regards to caste still exists. And it's not that it is something specific to India, it is specific to Indians. Because recently in America, there was a movement which happened, and there's a caste bill which has been passed in America. Because what the Indian diasporic population was doing was that in companies and in neighborhoods, they were not allowing certain castes and varnas to reside in America, and they had to pass an anti-caste bill in America for that. That you cannot bar a person because of a caste identity to enter into a neighborhood or an area. So it's not that it is India, it is in even temples and certain areas in India till today, certain people are not allowed to enter. If you don't know about it, you're extremely fortunate and ignorant also, or ignorance is bliss, as it is said. But the people who can see it, who can feel it, who are discriminated against, who are excluded, who are said names, who are called certain names, who are beaten up or ostracized for certain activities which they do, it is still something very, very significant, and India reels under it. But that way, India has come a very long way from where it started because of certain personalities which we are discussing, from Jyotiba and Savitribai Phule to Sri Narayan Guru to Periyar, to no one else but Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, along with other personalities who are related to him, that there are at least constitutional safeguards against certain things. Positive discrimination is there, and untouchability, one of the most inhumane activities, along with sati, equally bad as sati, maybe more and more prevalent, had to be removed. But the problem is, in India, still there are areas in which these things are followed. Now, the starting point of this comes with Jyotiba Phule. Jyotiba Phule is a product of colonialism in the sense that he studied in an English school. He read a book called by Thomas Paine, which talked about equality. And Phule comes from a depressed class background in the Maharashtra sector. And he did not see caste until when he was thrown out of a procession, a Bharat procession of his own very good friend by the relatives of his family, of one of the groom's family, because of his caste. At that moment, Phule realized that caste is real. Caste is based on discrimination. It's not that he had not felt it, but when coming from an English educated background, he felt that okay, the British have changed things. And that moment, Jyotiba Phule and his wife Savitribai Phule, to whom he actually inculcated education, she herself in her right is a very important social reformer for girls' education. Jyotiba Phule is also the one who termed or coined the term depressed and the word Dalit, which is broken and excluded from society. He was the one who became a pioneer in three things. First, the concept of depressed class activism, education of the depressed class, anti-Brahmanical movement, and girls' education, in which he was the one who gave education to both depressed classes and girls. And Savitribai Phule was very instrumental in girl education, and girl, what we call as exclusion from society, was something which she challenged. He had his own organization, Satyashodhak Samaj, the Seekers of Truth, and it acted as a very important means of spreading the idea of education as a form of emancipation. He believed that the only way the depressed classes could go forward would be when we challenge first the concept of Brahmanical domination, the priestly class. And he had a very interesting perspective. It may be that the Vedas and the Upanishads talk about social exclusion, but he said that maybe the scriptures are not the problem. It is the interpreters of this who are rather more important. Maybe the Pandits and the Brahmins are the ones who create this order of social exclusion, and maybe our texts don't talk about it. So he was very clear in saying that be it scriptural or non-scriptural, social exclusion should not be there, social discrimination should not be there. And then being, in that sense, a pioneer in this area, on which later we will have the most towering figure with regards to depressed classes and generally the constitutional history of India, as Dr. Ambedkar. Dr. Ambedkar will discuss in the end of the class in his own context, not right now. So, Jyotiba Phule comes from a depressed class background from Pune, born in 1827. Scottish Mission High School, he had his education. Married to Savitribai Phule, who herself was a very important personality when it comes to girls' education and untouchable girls and education for them. He will read the book The Right of Man and get inspired about equality. He condemned the inequality in religious books as perpetuated by the intermediaries, campaigned against untouchability and the condition of lower castes, and he argued that Brahmanical domination is something which needs to be challenged. And the fact is, orthodox nature of religion, caste hierarchy, exploitation of the masses, and misleading rituals and hypocrisy prevalent in religion is something which makes religion even more problematic. Unity, equality, and religious principles for everyone is something which he wanted. Aggrieved means people who are affected by it. Now, you should add Wikipedia pictures to personalities for better remembrance. Problem is that those are copyrighted. That is the problem. Now, in 1851, he will start a school for girls and specifically untouchable girls. And in 1875, he will have a specific home from pregnant women, but pregnant widows of dominant caste. He believed that these dominant castes treat women like depressed classes. And therefore, he had a specific space for dominant caste widows, who could have a safe space in which they could give birth. And widow remarriage may have worked, but in certain cases it backfired also. And he had a safety net for that also. He talked about widow and education for women, taught reading and writing to his wife, making her the towering figure in social reform and feminist reform in that regard. Advocated widow remarriage, fought for females against female infanticide. So the issues remain the same. But his most important contribution is to coin a term which captures the plight of the depressed classes, which is Dalit, arguing that compulsory primary education is the only way you can incentivize and take the lower castes forward. His organization, Satyasodak Samaj, and his newspaper, Deen Bandhu, tried to argue that the only way you go above exploitation and oppression is through education. And he condemned caste hierarchy. And in the Mahabharata, a very important sacred text, he used the symbol of Raja Bali so as to mobilize and argue that even our texts and scriptures are about empowerment of people. And therefore, Satyasodak Samaj and Jyotiba Phule remain till today an example of depressed class movement and depressed class upliftment. At the same point of time, we have in Kerala another important pillar of depressed class, which is Srinarayan Guru. Anybody has any issue with Jyotiba Phule generally? Simple, straightforward points. Don't have to do anything. Shall we say absence of authority in the hands of Brahmins in modern India is also because of emergency rights? See, modern India, as you know today, Gokul is much more complicated. It's not about absence of authority or it's about giving authority. We all are dominated by the concept of the constitution. We are constitutional beings. Depressed class means Dalit class. We are constitutional beings. What we do at a personal level is totally something which we do at a personal level. Please understand this point. That in India today, it is extremely hard to do what they were doing maybe pre-independence. We have a lot of safeguards, but that doesn't mean that at a micro level, things will not happen. And you need to understand one thing. There is a level to which state action can go. Only when this changes, then society changes. You need to understand this point. And it's not about education also. It's not about education also. Because very educated people actually perpetuate in urban areas casteism. And in that regard, it is a matter of perception and mentality and behavioral change. Much like how women's safety is also a more behavioral thing than just state having capital punishment for things. Until unless we don't change our thinking, things don't change. And the fact of the matter is that we still are locked within those identities in that regard. If it is convenient, we use that identity. If it is not convenient, we don't use that identity. So it's a much more complicated issue today. Very, very complicated. Until unless we don't change our mindset, we can't change the approach in that regard. Get my point? There's no right and wrong answer here. Your way could be right, something else could be right, understanding it would be right, totally different in that regard. because safeguards are there, but that does not mean that things are not happening. No, not in that sense, Lakshay. He was portrayed within the Mahabharata as a certain identity. That is why. See, you could see one thing, that laws are always normative. When you kill a person, you will get 7 years in jail. Does it mean that people have stopped killing each other? So if I come after 50, 60, 500, 200, 300 years, I could see the laws and say, see, 7 years jail means nobody used to do crime. It's the other way around, rather. You need laws because people are doing it more. That's the point. Okay, yeah, Gurudevan and Narshi Narayan Guru, the same person. Can we talk about Gurudevan and or Sri Narayan Guru? Yes. Okay. Sri Narayan Guru comes from and I'm sorry about the pronunciation. The Izava community of Kerala, and his most important intervention was with regards to priest and temple entry. He is in a way a pioneer when it comes to the temple entry movement. Gurudevan, as he was called by his own followers, it was about spiritual freedom and move. And in Kerala and specifically in South, this issue with regards to temple entry is something very very significant and very very hardcore. And he will develop what is called the Sri Narayan Dharma Paripalana Yogam, which will basically the SNDP, which will act as a way of upliftment of downtrodden and establishment of temples and educational institutions for specifically the depressed classes. And he very simply criticized the fourfold Varna structure for all the issues. But the way he did it was equally interesting, because what is related to Sri Narayan Guru is called the Aravipuram movement. In this, in Aripuram, there was a Shiva temple which was not allowing depressed classes to go and worship on Shivratri or on very, very important moments. In order to show to these castists, excluding priests, that God is not a monopoly of someone, he will himself establish a temple in Kerala called the Aravipuram Temple of Lord Shiva. And very ominously on the walls of this temple is written, devoid of the dividing walls of caste and or race, hatred of rival faith, we all live here in brotherhood. So he argued that God cannot be a monopoly of someone or of the Brahmins. God does not discriminate, Brahmins do. And therefore, he will become the pioneer of a movement called the Temple Entry Movement, which we'll discuss during the civil disobedience movement, in which even Gandhi will get involved. An equally pioneering ideology was E.V. Ramaswamy Naikar, and we call him Periyar. He is the pioneer of what is called as the self-respect movement. He argued that the Brahmins are the minority and everyone else is a majority. Then why is that minority is dominating over majority? And over and above that, he argued that only when the depressed classes develop self-respect, then only they will get respect from someone else. That ways, it is about untouchability, but about dignity. Only when dignity is developed within the same community, it will lead to a anti-Brahmanical ideology. And E.V. Ramaswamy Naikar is also equally important for women's reform, because he said that women should also have the right to divorce. If men can leave women, women should be able to also leave men. Men who married by deceit, or men who turned out to be just the opposite of what they should be. In abusing relationships, women should have the right to divorce. So I'll give you a slide summarizing their basic ideologies. The point is, from orthodox arranged marriages to the women's right to divorce to the concept of chastity and application on men. Basically, we talk about women being chaste, being very, very what we call as have to control everything, their sexual urges, everything. Then why is that men should not also have the same level of chastity or the same ideas of chastity in that regard. So these three personalities, we will come back to both of them, which is Srinarayan Guru and Naikar in the civil disobedience context. I used to do it here, but it used to not make sense because somehow in between Gandhi's name used to come in. So when I'll be doing CDM, I will discuss that with you, which is chastity is related to the norms of sexual conduct. Now, here you just have to remember Phule, Jyotiba Phule, Shri Narayan Guru, and last but not the least, Periyar or E.V. Ramaswamy Naikar. I hope, Jib, now it is clear. You were confused between these two people. So if Hinduism there was no concept of divorce, then why was it promoted? I don't get it. There's a concept of divorce in every religion. That's not the point. It's about women having social pressure to not leave, which still exists in some form today. Jyotiba Phule, Jyotiba Phule, he emphasizes, he's the pioneer of the word Dalit, girls' education, and education as a means of freedom, equality, and liberty of depressed classes. Srinarayan Guru is the pioneer of temple entry movement, challenging the norms of monopoly of God by certain communities and Brahmins. And Periyar is known for self-respect movement, women's right to divorce, against caste-driven arranged marriages, and dignity for the depressed classes. And basically based on this we will have a temple entry movement that will be there in 1930s. And based on this you have the what we call as the self-respect party. And you'd have also heard about a party called Justice Party. These two are based on the ideas of Periyar. And even if you will go to certain parts of Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, you will find Periyar's picture for sure. Periyar's picture along with Dr. Ambedkar, or Sri Narayan Guru's picture along with Dr. Ambedkar. E.V. Ramaswamy Naikar till today is considered a very important, very important personality when it comes to depressed class reform in that sense. So are we clear with this? Yes, Jeep. Clear about this depressed class reform? We'll be back here with Dr. Ambedkar soon. Right now, just before early nationalism, we are discussing. Clear, sir? Very good, sir. Very good, sir. Okay. Now, let's talk about now the other religions. The first is the Parsi reform. Parsi reform. Now, when we talk about Parsi reform, Parsi community, if you know, if you don't know, they are from the what is called the Zoroastrian religion. They are mostly what we call as a mercantile community, commercial classes. They have their own religion, Zoroastrianism, coming from the Iran-Iraq sector. They were slowly but surely migrating into the Indian subcontinent, and very peaceful, peace-loving people. Never got any never, there is no instance of conflict in any scripture or any text which talks about Parsis rebelling or anything like that. They became a very integral part of Gujarat, Maharashtra, and that whole coastline. And one of the pioneers in breaking the British argument was also a Parsi, no one else but Dadabhai Naroji. So he developed a body, or he was involved in a social reform movement based body. No, they have their own texts. They have nothing to do. They have nothing to do with the with Islam or Hinduism or Christianity. No, 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 no. Nothing like that. Tata family is a Parsi family. Jamshedji Tata. So you Naroji, you see Sorabji, Naroji. These this type of title is mostly taken from Parsis, not specifically, but in like that. So 1851, there was a body which came up, which was called the Rehnumai Mazyadansan Sabha. But you don't have to remember this part. Just remember, Rehnumai means Parsi reform. And you have Naroji, Furunji, Sarabji, Shapruji, Bengali, and Dadabhai Naroji, along with K.N. Kama, who were very prominent leaders from this community. Is there any connection between Persian? Persian is a language and a culture. Parsi is a community. Now, what Dadabhai Naroji, one of the founders of this organization, wanted was two things. Obviously, it was how education should come in, but they were very particular about something, which is women and uniform laws of inheritance. Basically, for them, their argument was women's right to inheritance, which was very significant because this would empower her position within the society. So, through a newspaper called Rush Goftar, they used to always talk about social reform within the Parsi community, removing orthodoxy, but more than that, education for women, marriage, and social position for women in general. Now, you to tell me, they are from a different religion altogether, but are their issues different? More or less fundamentally the same. More or less fundamentally the same thing. So, if you look at it, Parsi reform also revolves around women, right to inheritance, education, marriage rights, and education for the community. Now, this is the only organization. Remember Rehnumai and Rasht Goftar. Two words, if you can remember. Then we move to Muslim Reform Movement, which is the most significant long section in that regard. Can we discuss Muslim community, Muslim revivalists and reformists? Yes? Okay. Now, when we talk about the Muslim community, when the reform impulse did come, they closed themselves. The British said that you have parda, they said we don't care. They said you are this, you are that. The Muslim community said that we don't care about your criticism. But what happens is that after 1857, and I will discuss it with you when I'll discuss 1857 tomorrow with you, There was a feeling which was developed within the British that somehow the 1857 was a Muslim conspiracy, which was technically not true because for Bahadur Zafar and Khan Bahadur Khan, Bakht Khan, all other leaders which rebelled were actually Hindus. Rani Jhansi, Tatya Tope, Nana Sahib, Kumar Singh. Then you have Begum Hazrat Mahal as one example. But for every Muslim leader, we also have a Hindu leader. So British, however, did not understand this idea, and they rather developed this concept that because Bahadur Zafar was there, so it has to be a Muslim conspiracy. So what happened was that between 1857 and the next 10 to 15 years, till 1861-70, the British did not touch the Muslim community too much. But as nationalism rose, they were able to decode that the answer to nationalism is the Muslim community by breaking the unity, which was a very important feature in 1857. And for the same reason, you will see that it is only after 1909 separate electorates, Morley Minto, that they will start to basically play with the community too much. But Sir Syed Ahmad Khan realized that he was, at the end of the day, a educated Muslim elite. He realized that this is not the way the Muslims or the Muslim community or Islam needs to operate in India. And therefore, the most important reformist for the Muslim community was Sir Syed Ahmad Khan and his what is called as the Aligarh movement. He established a college in Aligarh, the Anglo-Mohammedan College, which was later renamed as Aligarh Muslim University, till today exists as a premier institution. Aligarh movement was actually not about Muslim reform per se, but it was about the Muslim community absorbing Western education and a little bit of modernization. And through this Aligarh movement, he wanted to also show to the British or prove to the British that he was a collaborator and not a conspirator. That this misconception which the British developed should have been removed. So his basic advocacy was Western education. Islam can become better via the concept of Western education being inculcated. The whole community can go forward. But the problem is, Sir Syed Ahmad Khan, after a point, becomes problematic along with one of the people of the Aligarh movement, is Muhammad Iqbal, because they get connected to the Muslim League and then connected to the issue of Pakistan. Communalism is something I will develop with you after, I think next week I will start to develop with you. At the point I will discuss Morley Minto reform, separate electorates with you. I will develop this concept with you. What do you mean by this separate interest concept? And how Curzon is the pioneer in developing this model of division. The point was that except for the initial period of Sir Syed Ahmad Khan, later he is related to communism, and we will deal with him there in that regard. But the discussion we have right now with him is the fact related to the Aligarh movement, the fact related to the fact he argued that scientific thought and Western education should be integrated into the Muslim community. He talked about how the Quran is the authoritative text. It is a writing which should not be ignored, and everything else written later maybe are not something which is important. It's secondary. He argued that Muslim women should have political and economic rights also. So he's trying to reform the community itself. will set up the Mohammedan Anglo-Oriental College, that will basically be AMU today, Aligarh Muslim University. And this will become a hub for him and his followers to take the Aligarh movement forward. So, for example, people like Chirag Ali, Nasir Ahmad, Maulana Shibli, you don't have to remember the names, are very distinguished leaders of the Aligarh movement. Polygamy, parda, easy divorce, talaq system, he critiqued it also. But he insisted on cooperation with the British and reform amongst the Muslims. And that was through modern education only. His way of taking this forward was through his magazine, Tehzeeb ul Akhlaq. Closely related to the Aligarh movement is Iqbal, one of the greatest poets of modern Indian history, but also related to the Muslim League in that regard, tangentially. He again was very influential in creating a certain type of environment, wherein he talked about how there needs to be a change in the way we look at the British, about everything which is happening around us, and how that change could be embodied in the larger concept of the aspirations of a nation. And that is why his poems always used to talk about, in a way, a nationalistic spirit in that sense. So he talked about human action being important. He talked about control over your own destiny. He said that if you are accepting other sins, that is also problematic. So he condemned ritualism, the concept of renunciation, otherworldly attitude. He talked about happiness. So he's a little bit over the top when it comes to the ideas which were developing at that point of time, but a good, important personality that was. But other than the reformists, which is Aligarh movement, all other bodies within this whole structure, which is, they are revivalists. And in Muslim revivalism, it is more problematic because the British found it very difficult to control it. You have the Wahhabi movement, you have the Ahmadiyya, and you have the Deoband, all three related to revivalism. The core ideology being that Islam had been changed by over a period of time, and Islam had to go back to the original concept, the Quranic verses, the original Quranic interpretation. But why is that the British found it very, very problematic was that when it came to pinning on who distorted their religion, the ironic fact is that neither the Wahhabis, neither the Ahmadiyya or the Deoband said it was Hinduism. Rather, the Wahhabi, Ahmadiyya and Deoband said, who is the problem? British. You know about sedition law, right? You know about sedition law. 1870, the law of sedition was launched in India, or conceptualized by the British, which said that if you, 124A, if you entice disaffection against the British and basically against the state now, it is considered a punishable offense. Ironically, this act was not for the nationalists. It was developed for the Wahhabis specifically. Because the Wahhabis literally in their writing used to strip the British naked when it came to how they had destroyed Indian subcontinent and religion and Islam. They were very instrumental in the 1857 revolt also. And though over a period of time their orientation and their ideas have changed with communalism mixing up, the period in which we are having this discussion, their orientation is totally different. Their orientation is more towards an idea of anti-British colonial struggle. So in a way, they revive, but they pin the revivalism and the issues not on some other community, but on the British. That they are the ones who distorted our religion and we need to go after them. And the Wahhabis literally used to write day in, day out about how the British were a very inferior civilization, how they were looters, and that is why they needed a Sedition Act to basically control the Wahhabis. So the Wahhabi or the Waliullah movement, which started as the first major challenge or revivalism within the Islamic community in India, it is a revivalist movement to purify Islam of all un-Islamic practices that had crept into Muslim society through the ages. But their argument was that it was the ages change has happened because of the British. It was started in Arabia by Abdul Wahab. That is not important for you. But in India, it was Shah Waliullah Dehlavi, who basically was the one who precepted it, who talked about it, and became very, 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 very common and very popular under Sayyid Ahmad Behrlawi. Anything which is important, I have marked it in yellow already. Just note it down into that table which you have to make. Now, initially, their target was after the annexation of Punjab, they became extremely anti-British. And during the revolt of 1857, they were again doing anti-British activities. And the whole IPC 124A was the sedition law was introduced to control the Wahhabis. To control the Wahhabis. So please understand this point that the British did not develop it for the nationalists. The most unlikeliest of bodies gave them the biggest challenge in that regard. Unlikeliest of bodies gave them the biggest challenge. Now, this was manifested in the form of a peasant movement in which it's called the T2 Mir movement, in which Nithar Ali, also known as T2 Mir, who was a Waliullah movement related, he had a peasant agitation in which he fought against the landlords and the British planters. If you look at it, there is also something written, Muslim peasant versus Hindu landlord. Now you tell me that did T2 Mir start this whole concept? Vis-a-vis this agitation, was it communally charged? Which identity is more important here, the first or the second? The second. Ironically, peasant was fighting the landlord. Coincidentally, it was Muslim versus Hindu. Why have I written this line like this? Because I want to show you something. You see what you want to see. You see what you want to see. What you want to see is as a Hindu-Muslim conflict. But what it was not a Hindu-Muslim conflict, but was a clash between two cultures. Or clash between two classes. The difference is if you call it Muslim peasant versus Hindu landlord, you call it Hindu-Muslim violence. If you call it peasant versus landlord, that is how economic conflicts work. That is a conflict of interest. The British would want you to see the first and second. But the way it was agitated was the second was the first identity, and the secondary identity was the fact that it was peasant versus landlord, so it became Hindu versus Muslim. This is something which will be my endeavor throughout this course now, which is to show you that there is a lens through which you can see what you want to see. If you wanted to see the first one, you will look at that first one. If you want to see the second one, you will look at the second one first. And the first one, looking at it like that, was taught by the British. The British taught us to look it like that. Now, closely related to this again is the Farisi movement. Farisi movement began as a peasant movement, and that was against the landlord and the British oppressor. But you can see one thing, that here, because there's no fine line, there is no way of categorization of that also. The person who was the leader was Dudumian, written like Mia Esse and something like Mian. Both are the same thing. And his ideology was that all men are equal, that all land belongs to God, and no one has the right to levy tax on it. And therefore, he was who took it upon himself to become a moment of movement. Now, what I'm trying to do here is two things. I put it into Muslim reform also, but this is also true for peasant reform. This exact same thing can be written in peasant movement and it will be true there also. But I'm trying to tell you that these are religious men who took it upon themselves to be anti-colonial also. So the Farisi movement is both a religious movement but also directed against the British. So it is equally important to read them in both areas. Thereafter, you get the Deoband school. This is the most interesting because they had two basic ideas. They also said that we need to go back to the original form of Islam. They also talked about propagating pure teaching of Quran and Hadith for the Muslims, but they also taught keeping the spirit alive against British rule. Basically, they were acting like a proper anti-colonial school whose first task was to revive, second task was to criticize the British. The British never expected this type of response from certain religious communities, which could later become a problem for them because they created a certain argument in that sense. And therefore, 1866, it will become very common. It will emerge from Saharanpur under Muhammad Qasim Nanotwi, and it will talk about including original Islamic religion, Western education, and English education. And last but not the least, it's about moral regeneration. That they said that the British had destroyed the Muslim community. We need to refigure that. But isn't Hindu peasant? But isn't Hindu peasants go against colonialism? Like, what's the use of studying differently with the tag of religion? Jaswant, I have given you that line from a book so as to show you that how certain literature can also misappropriate, miscategorize. That's what I'm trying to argue here. I will never write it like that. I will write it as a peasant movement against landlords, but I picked it up exactly from Bipin Chandra. So that is why it is given like that. Okay. Then you have the Ahmadiyya movement. Ahmadiyya movement will start in Punjab, and Ahmadiyya movement became a little bit too wavered out because started by Mirza Ghulam Ahmad. He took it upon himself to now become the next Messiah. He argued that Prophet Muhammad had sent him as the new prophet, as the new renewer of Islam itself. And he took it upon himself to say that I will now prove to the world that Islam was the best religion. This is the one which becomes a little bit tangentially out. But he would be seen as a KC Sen type personality who starts as a way of taking reform forward, but he himself now starts to argue that he is the one who will reinterpret the Holy Quran itself. So, when it comes to Muslim reform, as I told you, we have on one side the Aligarh movement, and on the other, it was Deoband. Will not even say use the word verses, but these are we. You have Deoband, Ahmadiyya, Wahhabi, Titumir, and Farisi movement. These three are anti-British but revivalists. These two are peasant movement with religious orientation. This is a reform movement. Are we clear about these things? If we are, we'll move forward. Clear, sir? Last little bit, I'll give you a long break. Don't worry. 10-15 minutes I'll give you. Then last, we'll discuss peasant tribal, the understanding based. So can I do Sikhism also vis-a-vis means in comparison to. Yes? Okay, perfect. Thank you. Now you have the Sikh movement, in which you have three movements. One is called the Nirankari movement, then it's called the Singh Sabha movement, and last is called the movement which is related to Akali. Now, Nirankari movement still exists, started by Baba Dayal Das. The Nirankaris basically believed that we should not worship the human gurus or the 10 gurus. Rather, we should not worship even the places in which they were related to. We should worship the Granth Sahib. So they're called Nirankari because they argued that we should worship the God who is formless. Until today, the Nirankaris based in Delhi itself are very significant in changing the perception of, yes, Nirgun Nirankari. Yes, they basically have changed the way in which Sikhism is seen as. But their most important contribution is two things. First, they argued that the Guru Granth Sahib should be the most important, and the way now all more or less 99% of all the marriages which happen within Sikhism is actually based on what is called the Anant Karat and Karanj, same thing, which is a very simple, straightforward marriage in front of the Granth Sahib, in which certain verses are sung as a way of union between man and woman. This simple version of non-ritualistic, elaborate marriages is something which the Nirankaris gave. And when it came to the Kuka movement, which is related to the Nirankari movement itself, same period in that regard, which was based on the on Baba Balak Singh in Western Punjab. He comes from a specific community of the Punjabi community, which is called the Namdhari. Namdhari are known to, when they are going to go to fight, they do a certain type of kukkan. So they they make a certain noise when before they go. It's a war cry which they have. That is why it's called the Kuka movement. And Baba Ram Singh was the one who started to argue that caste system, female infanticide, marriage and dowry and barter of daughters should not happen within marriages. So they again trying to remove the social evils, and he made Anand marriages the most common one. I think if you are from the community, you would know that now all more or less all marriages happen between the same setting, which was developed by first the the Nirankari and then the Namdhari. So you have Nirankari who are talking about not talking or not worshipping gurus in a way of form, and second Namdhari, which is about reforming the community from within. Reforming the community from within. They're not attacking caste system within Sikhism. Caste system generally in that area about distinctions, and that is why Sikhism in that regard always has this concept of langar. Langar, everybody eats together, and therefore there is no caste distinction. Rich, poor, upper caste, lower caste doesn't matter. All are the same within that system in that sense. Thereafter, you have the Singh Sabha movement, which starts after the Sikh empire was destroyed by the British, what Ranjit Singh had created. And the Khalsa had lost its prestige. The way the missiles had been defeated by their own internal fighting. Teja Singh, Lal Singh had shown treachery. And now what the Singh Sabha movement believed was that now Sikhs have to go forward after the suppression of the Kuka movement itself. They need to go forward with education. This is internal reform within that religion to go for better understanding of what we call as education based Sikh communities, because they were closing themselves. They said, open us, let's open our religion, let's remove the social evils, but let's add education into it. And therefore, the Singh Sabha movement was two things. The benefits of Western enlightenment through modern education should be there. But at the same time, we also, and this is where the Singh Sabha movement becomes problematic, you see, oppose the activities of Arya Samaj. Now, do you get it? How these two things are related to each other? How these two are related to each other? The Arya Samaj now became very active in this zone, and they started to now say that Sikhs can also come back into the Hindu religion. And thereafter, Christian missionary, Aligarh movement, Ahmadiyya, Brahmo Samaj, they started to oppose that the Sikhs should not go into other spaces. They should remain within Sikhism itself. Last but not the least is the Akali movement. And Akali movement has an impact till today. And I'll give you the summary of this, don't worry. Akali movement, most important concept is that Gurdwaras used to be controlled by what are called the Udasi Mahants. Basically, a Mahant, a person used to control Gurdwaras. After the Sikh empire was disintegrated, these Udasi Mahants became very pro-British, very corrupt, very, very corrupt. So within the Sikh community started what is called the Akali or Gurdwara reform movement. It's an offshoot of the Singh Sabha movement itself. And it was about taking away power from these Udasi Mahants who were loyalists and reactionary and corrupt. And therefore, the direct consequence of the Akali movement, which actually absorbed one of the characteristics of Gandhian movement, which is non-cooperation, they were able to make the British pass a law which is called the Sikh Gurdwara Act of 1922, which till today controls how Gurdwaras are administered. Basically, it created the Shriomani Gurdwara Prabandhak Committee, the HGPC, and this body till today controls all Gurdwaras centrally through centrally appointed and democratic way of electing the Mahants who will go into these Gurdwaras. Now, this module is over finally, and we can now take a break and come back and start tribal and peasant movement. Now, very simply, as I told you, there are 3 to 4 movements in the Sikhs. 3 to more movements in the Sikhs. One is the Namdhari and the Nirankari. The other is the Singh Sabha and the Akali movement. Just remember this point, that this is related to formless God and what is called as Anand Karat marriages. This was again about education and Anand Karat marriages. Singh Sabha movement was about education, moving forward, and the most important, against other bodies which were challenging the Sikh community. And this is Gurudwara reform. Non-cooperation used. Can we take a break and move on to the next module vis-a-vis tribal and peasant movement? Done. Finally, we have borne the fruit of the painful start which we started in the morning. Very simply, social reform movement is over. When I come back, I'll tell you what to do with all this information and how we move towards the next module. Yes, formless God, not worshipping the gurus. So we take a break here. We'll come back at 7:30 straight, 7:30:35, and last 25-30 minutes, I want to have a proper discussion with you. Done? Okay. See you. Welcome back. Is class going to happen? Network issue. Where is our U741? Wait for 5 minutes more. कहाँ चले गए? कहाँ उड़ गए? Is the class delayed? See. Ah. See, I was signing off on the questions which you had to get on Monday. So 11 minutes more comfort is something which you did not like. No issues. I have to sign off on all the questions which you get. Every Monday, you get 5 questions, na? That one. So I have not gone anywhere. कहीं चला नहीं गया मैं, कहीं उड़ नहीं गया. I'm still here. See, if you see this, faculty video turned off, or if you see this, it means I have done it. So don't worry. Until unless that small bar is there which says faculty video turned off, I had to do it because it has to be uploaded by Monday. So ominously, it came to me just 10 minutes back. So can we summarize and move on? Yes, can we? And I'll take these minutes back from you. Don't worry about that. It will come back to you. Oh, PS, we can see when you joined. Very good. Okay, perfect. Not today. At least we can summarize at least. I'll not introduce this topic to you, but we can at least summarize what we have to do. Yes, that is what I'm going to tell Akash what to do with this information. Now, see, if I count it back, how many organizations were there in Hindu Reform? How many organizations were there in Hindu Reform? Can you expect depressed class movement MCQ? Why not? 9. Very good. Then depressed classes, let's take it as a round number, 10. Depressed classes was 3. Then you have 1 Parsi. Thereafter 5 in Muslim Reform, and thereafter, last but not the least, 3 here. 3 not 4. 4 here. Namdhari, Nirankari, and 2 more. I'll tell you what to do. See, listen to me. Don't worry about it. Saurabh, okay, welcome. I studied world history with you in morning batch, my first lecture in modern history. Saurabh, we've come in between. So tomorrow I will say, talk about. See, 10, 3, 1, 5, 4. Total number of organizations I have discussed with you in class. How much? Come on, CSAT question. 23. Okay. Now, what I want from each one of you, very simply, is that you are going to make a table and you are going to make an entry of all of these in those tables. 23 entries I want. In my book, you would have seen, for example, I've already done that, but I want you to do it because I'll show you something. I'll show you something very significant. You see, where I don't want you to waste time, I have actually done it for you. I have actually done it for you, which is, you see here. You see, tribal, you see, I've already done it for you. So here I thought that there was no point doing it yourself. It would have wasted your time. So where I thought it is unnecessary, I've done it for you. So what I want from you is very simply, that you make this table, because it will do 2 things together. First, it will help you revise as you put in the data. From which should I start? Lecture 1 or Saurabh, do makeup for the lectures by throughout the week. Right now, be with me. Don't worry about that. Now, what I want is that by making these 23 entries, you will at least go through the PPTs once, try to understand what information needs to go. And I want an email from each one of you who is diligently doing it. I don't care about the years, I care about the data. Organization, founder, ideology, remark. Everybody is going to make it. And what I want from you, second thing, is that you will revise from it from time to time, which is one, not for tomorrow class. I give you a week. Next week, Saturday, I want this table from you. And one organization each day you will learn. One organization each day you will learn. And very simply, this based organization concept was going to be the way you were going to learn it systematically. Here the word systematically is very important, because by systematically learning it, you will not forget it forever. That is the first thing. Second thing is that there can be prelims and mains questions both. Prelims and mains question both. This will be organization, founder, the concept of ideology, what they're following, and remarks, if any, specifically other than what you have to write. Now, prelims question can be done by this table, but thereafter you have mains questions also which come. Mains question which also come. Tomorrow, I will show you a question which very simply says, and I'm just going to discuss it with you. It says, discuss the rise and evolution or rise and development of the socio-religious reform movement with special reference to Young Bengal movement and Brahmo Samaj. This was the question which came in the examination. You have to discuss the rise, development, and special reference to Young Bengal and to the concept of what we call as Brahmo Samaj. Rise means you have to discuss causes. Development means the issues. And 2 to 3 lines about these people. 2 to 3 lines about these people. Wherein you just have to say that what does Brahmo Samaj embody? What does Young Bengal embody? 110% you should not get a question directly saying, for example, that write a short note on Vivekananda. That is a more social issues type question, philosophy optional type question, or optional question, and not a GS level question. But in the case you do get it, this box will help you in writing that answer. So my humblest request to each one of you, humblest request is, firstly, thank you so much. Tomorrow we finish the last painful topic, which is peasant and tribal. I've already done what you need to do previously. You've been patient, pat on the back to survive this. You have come out unscathed and you have survived these 8 or 6 hours with me, because this is the only heavy part. Now, when it comes to wars, expansion, socio-religious, and peasant and tribal, the concept is very straightforward, which is that these are very factual topics. What I've done for you is I've already given you a trick for wars, which is, remember, Carnatic, Mysore, Bengal, Mysore, Maratha, and last is the Sikhs. Anomaly is one Maratha and one Mysore first, and thereafter Mysore in sequence. In expansion, again, I've tried to give you, for example, Ipopa, madman Seri, and I've tried to give you treaty concepts. Wherever there is factual knowledge, Baja Farmu, Vohura, and Jaswant has made it better for us by adding the Femin commissions also. And the socialist reform movement and peasant tribal can be managed by tables, which you have or you are going to make. One I've already made for you. Tomorrow we start something very significant, which is first we finished peasant tribal. It will take me an hour maximum. Thereafter we do 1857, a beautiful section and very interesting relearning of that area, because you all have a conception of 1857. Thereafter we will go to the next most important concept, which is from from 1857 to pre the 1858 act, to pre INC associations, to safety valve theory, to the concept of INC's formation vis-a-vis safety valve or lightning conductor, Indian National Congress. And thereafter the last discussion we have, very significantly, very significantly, the concept of economic nationalism and moderates. So the only last pain, the vaccine, second vaccine shot, is your peasant and tribal. Hereafter, it's totally clear, very interesting, timeline based. We'll have a conversation about a lot of things. Do you believe that? What do you think of AOUM and all? I'll give you certain perspectives to go with it. So, thank you for your patience. Maybe you thought I was going too fast. Maybe you thought I was going too slow. Either way, my apologies. But the point is, this part was like this only. I will see you tomorrow, 10 o'clock. Don't forget, Saurabh and the people who are new in class. We meet tomorrow. We'll connect everything together. Your job is going to be that between Monday and Friday, we'll make up for what I've done previously. And we'll take the story forward next Saturday, Sunday. Next Saturday, Sunday. By next Saturday, Sunday, we will basically reach Gandhi. We'll be discussing Gandhi. We'll be discussing very significant aspects about our nationalism, Jallianwala Bagh, 1919 Act. We'll discuss a lot of things. So we are now going into the business zone of this subject. Tomorrow we reach 1857, halfway point. Right? So thank you. Take care. See you tomorrow, same time. Bye-bye.